listening to KELP Las Cruces. Feed your mind, feed your soul with your local Christian radio station, 89.3 FM.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the Borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecka. We are live on this beautiful Friday afternoon, January 24th, year of our Lord 2025. Kenny on the board, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm hanging in there.
You're hanging in there. I heard that you received some impact from one of our impact partners earlier on today.
Your impact partner, Dr. Yates, impacted two of my teeth.
Oh, so it's not a microphone malfunction. It's what is it? A dental malfunction?
Gauze.
Okay. So how was your experience with our impact partner, High Desert Oral and Facial Surgery?
Actually, went very well. The people there super friendly. Dr. Yates is very good. I mean, literally, it took less than a minute to yank both teeth out. Of course, after the prep work and all of that, but
sounds wonderful, Kenny on the board. And
it could have been worse.
And today I'm so excited about our conversation because, I never went to college, Kenny on the board.
Really?
No, never. And that's why I have a radio show, so I can learn. And
okay.
Last week we learned about testosterone. Got a little awkward, but it was
Yes.
important information.
Yes, it was.
We talked about, what else did we talk about? Diabetes.
Diabetes, yes.
Venezuela. We had a lot to talk about with Dr. Yates.
Yes.
Your Dr. Yates' wife. There's
Yes.
a lot. There's two Dr. Yates.
Right. His wife
that?
was the one we interviewed last week, and Dr. Yates himself was our second guest.
Right, exactly. And today we're going to learn a lot more.
Cool.
Yeah,
Learning's good.
So wherever you are out there, if you're listening on 1590 AM here in El Paso, 95.9 FM, maybe you're up in the beautiful city of Old Mesilla or Las Cruces or Hatch. You can be listening on 89.3 FM or streaming worldwide on KELPradio.com. We're also on KELP Radio on YouTube, KELP Radio on Facebook. You can watch the radio now.
Yes.
We're uptown, aren't we, Kenny, on the board?
We are definitely upscale now.
Yeah, so we're going to learn a lot more today. It was funny because I asked our guest today, and he's very special.
Go ahead.
Do you know why he's special?
Well, you always say it better.
He is the unique expression of an endlessly creative God.
Right.
But also, he sent me his bio, and I could literally spend the next hour just reading his bio.
So he's obviously watched the show or listened to the show before.
No.
If he sent you his bio? Because he knows you do homework.
Yes, well, I do a little bit of homework. But he is the Mike Loya Distinguished Chair in Engineering at UTEP.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, he is the founder of Limbs International, which has brought affordable prosthetics to thousands of people in over 50 nations around the world. I don't know if they do dental prosthetics.
I'm good.
It's called Limbs, so probably not.
No, probably not.
We'll have to dig into that later.
But I didn't know that they had chairs that were distinguished there.
But
I thought
they
chair's
do.
a chair.
He's one of the distinguished chairs. He's also involved in multiple patents. Perhaps most importantly, he's passionate about access to education and making technology useful to serve the needs of people around the world. He is a little bit of a tennis aficionado. And through the scientific method, he has proven that tennis skills do not translate to pickleball.
Wow, that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. So let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the one, the only, Dr. Roger Gonzalez. Dr. Gonzalez, welcome to 915 Talk.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I struggled so much while we're going to start this conversation because you're interested in so many things.
I like to stay busy. Yeah. My wife says I stay busy enough like if she had 10 husbands.
Oh, wow. Okay, that sounds tiring.
Yeah, I always have ideas. I'm always looking at stuff. So yes.
Tiring for her.
Yeah, keeping up with me sometimes can be bad. So.
Right. So, what I was thinking about is you're the Distinguished Chair of Engineering at UTEP, and let's say you were to walk into a high school classroom and you would spend some time with the students, how would you know if someone's going to be any good at engineering?
Actually, the standard approach that everyone always used is math and science. Do you like math and science? I actually would tend to disagree with that.
Okay.
I would say that the person that probably would be a good engineer is someone who likes to understand how things work.
Okay.
They like to tinker with things.
Right.
Right? And they like to see if they can improve stuff. So
Okay.
they learn about it, they start playing with it, and they try to improve it. So I think the issue of math and science are just tools to help you be a better tinkerer and a better builder in the process. So I'm a little concerned sometimes that we overemphasize the tools rather than the process of what it takes to be a good engineer.
Right. So a good engineer asks a lot of questions?
Well, a good engineer is curious. So,
Okay.
for example, have you ever wondered, I'll give you one.
Okay.
Have you ever wondered why fish don't float to the top and they don't sink to the bottom? They're always in the middle of the water.
I have never, ever thought about that.
So try to create something,
Okay.
put it in your bathtub, and see if you can create something that just stays in the middle.
In the middle.
Doesn't float to the top, doesn't sink to the bottom.
Okay.
That's incredibly difficult, and fish do it all the time.
Is it because of their muscles or because of their body weight?
Well, I think the issue is these fish have this ability to change their buoyancy.
Okay.
Right? And even when they're not active, they're not floating to the top and going bottom. They change their buoyancy. And if you realize the density of water changes dynamically based on temperature and pressure, they have the ability to adapt. How they do that in their bodies is fascinating.
Okay.
And then when somebody becomes really curious about that, they say, wow, if I can learn how to do that, what applications could I put together? You know?
Right.
So we have a class called Design Nature, where we look at nature and how things are created, and we look at the complexity and to try to understand it so that we can then use it to advance technology.
So what's an example?
Well, I mean, that's one example of fish.
Okay.
The other example would be things like how our brains coordinate our movements, right?
Okay.
Have you ever seen robots? They look kind of stiff and jerky.
Right.
But we don't. And because we are created in such a way where we have a very sophisticated controller called the brain,
Right.
where we're turning on and turning off muscles in such a way to create smooth movements. And so we're trying to use that to be able to create the ability to create continuous movement robotics in the process.
Okay. So somewhere in your, I made a joke about your bio, your
Right.
resume, but somewhere in there, I saw probably multiple times the term biomedical engineering.
Correct.
What is that?
So biomedical engineering is a pretty broad topic. You
Okay.
know, it really came into being about 75 years ago of the traditional disciplines like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. And so what happened is that we started looking at biological systems and approaching them from an engineering standpoint.
Okay.
If you look at your body, right,
Right.
we have a cooling system. It's
Yes.
called sweat. We're
Right.
sweating. We have a circulatory system to
Yes.
take nutrients to the edges of all our limbs. We have a pump, which is called a heart. We have a controller, which is called our brain. We're essentially a combination of a lot of different systems that we use all the time for
Right.
different things in technology. What we're trying to do is understand how we have a very sophisticated body in such a way to create different things. Now, that being said, biomedical engineering is very, very broad.
Okay.
I do biomechanics, but there's people that do biomaterials, right? There's people that do laser tissue interaction. There's people that do cell cultures and development. It's really, really broad. So just because someone's a biomedical engineer, it doesn't mean they know everything about that area, and they
Right.
become very, very specialized.
Right. Right. I mean, you can't just say
It's
I
like
do
a physician,
science.
right? I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
a physician doesn't know everything about medicine, and then that's why there's specialties.
Okay. So you specialize in biomechanics. Is that what you said?
Well, my background is actually, I have backgrounds in mechanical and biomedical engineering. So
Okay.
it makes sense that I would really specialize in biomechanics, but I have a subspecialty,
Okay.
which is musculoskeletal control.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Okay, musculo is muscle, skeletal is skeleton, and control is how the brain coordinates muscles and control of the bones to move. So that's really my subspecialty within biomechanics. So, you know, I'm an engineer. From that, I'm a biomedical engineer. From that, I'm a biomechanist. From that, I'm a musculoskeletal control specialist.
Okay. So you've spoken in many different venues around the world. And I think I saw one where you were talking about, I think it was the usefulness of technology.
Right.
So why is musculoskeletal? Why is that useful?
Well, it's useful.
Why would that matter to me if I'm driving down I-10 listening to this program?
Right. Okay.
What impact does that have on my life?
So have you heard of people getting joint replacements? Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they get knee replacements, hip
Yeah.
replacements, etc.
Right.
If you don't understand the loading conditions that happen when you walk, when you run, then it's very difficult to design a replacement joint that's going to work for your lifetime.
Right.
And joints are not just a bone. There's cartilage, right?
Right.
And so understanding, well, these bones need to have a covering. So understanding that how can we replicate the materials that cartilage has, right? The right, response. It's not always hard. It has some cushion. So understanding how the body does things allows us to be able to replicate something that we need to replace.
Okay.
Okay. Now the issue of control is actually more sophisticated. If I do a lot of prosthetic work, think about an arm, right? In our arm, we move our arm around, we move our fingers. Well, I can replace a hand, but unless there's something controlling the movement of the fingers, someone can't pick up a spoon or pick up a cup to drink.
Right.
The brain does that, and it moves your fingers, but not only does it give commands to your fingers and arms to move, but when you pick up a cup if there's water in it or not.
Right.
By how much resistance. It's interesting that the body senses through your fingers how heavy something is, and the heavier it is, it squeezes harder so it can pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we call that efferent and afferent signals. And so it's important to study that, because as we then help replace a person's arm, we then know how to be able to help control it and interact with the human body.
Right. So if you have a prosthetic hand, you're not like crushing the glass.
Correct. I mean, if it's if it's an empty styrofoam cup, you'll just crush it, right? But if you try not to crush anything and it's full and you don't know, it just slips right through your hand.
Right. Wow. So are any of these things, like, do you then use it in robotics? Like what you learn? Is that what's happening?
Well, I do most of my work related to human beings.
Okay.
And how to apply it to human beings. But a lot of the things we study can be applied to robotics.
Okay.
Right, and stuff. And so with the development of how we can use robots to do different things, we can use the things we learn to do that. Right. And more we're realizing that nature does things so well that we study how it does it so we can try to replicate it.
Okay. So let's go back to your childhood. You grew up in El Paso.
I did.
You're a true son of the Borderland.
I am.
Yeah, and you grew up.
Go Panthers! Austin Panthers.
Oh, you went to Austin?
I went to Austin High.
I live right there. So growing up, it was a different time, and going over to Juarez was a different experience.
Right.
And tell me, I think you were about 10 years old, and you went to a market.
Right.
In Juarez. What happened?
So I've given this story several times. One of the inspirations, one of those times in life where life pivoted for me, is we used to go to Juarez as a family all the time to do our grocery shopping.
Grocery shopping,
right? Because, well, we lived in the lower income. My dad made minimum wage, and so to help stretch the dollar, we would do shopping in Juarez. And so we would go on the weekend to Juarez to shop. And on one of these trips to go shopping, we used to park really close to the Mercado, which is close to the Catedral in downtown Juarez.
Right.
And so we parked the car, and my dad and I started walking towards the Mercado. And on the process of walking to the Mercado, there was a little boy playing on the streets, but this little boy had an amputation. And he was on this wooden cart that someone made for him. And he was trying to play with the kids that were playing soccer on the street. And he couldn't kick the ball, so what he would do is he kind of propel himself with his arms, and then, I guess they let him use his arms to move the ball.
Right.
And I thought that was like interesting and fascinating, and I thought that's pretty cool, and so I kind of had a snarky attitude about it and thought it was funny.
Okay.
And my dad didn't think that was very funny. And my dad, sternly, got my attention and said, by the grace of God, there go you and I.
Wow. Yeah.
And that day has stayed with me the rest of my life.
Wow.
And it was that motivated me to say, as a person who is now educated and understands the human body, how can I then use my skills, the talents that God has given me, to help the poorest of the poor around the world?
Right. So we're going to get into that.
Okay.
Let me ask you first, though. You then went on to be a model middle school and high school student.
Oh,
Is that correct?
No. So, unfortunately, my junior high and high school, especially high school years, were filled with distraction. Distraction that was self-created.
Okay.
And I was more interested in extracurricular activities, if I was to put it that way. And I did some things that got me in trouble, got me expelled from school. And there's things that, fortunately, I probably could have a criminal record if there wasn't issues of me being a juvenile. And so those things that were distracting me, as I look back now, was a symptom of me being bored.
Okay.
Because I was pretty intelligent and I could pick up stuff in the classroom, and I felt like I can pass this class without doing a single thing. And I wasn't interested in A's, just pass the class. So I think part of it is the issue of being bored, but part of it was the issue that I had all this untapped energy.
Okay.
That I needed to expend. And instead of expending it maybe in high school sports or clubs and stuff, I decided to expend it by doing things that weren't very productive.
But exhibited your curiosity.
Yes, in fact, there are times where it's like that. Some of the things I did were pretty creative, you know, and that's why I'm saying is you can look at somebody like me that wasn't very talented in math and science necessarily, even though I understood it, but I had the ability to discern how to make things happen in a unique way.
Right. So I guess that goes back to my first question. How do you know if someone's going to be a good engineering student?
Yeah, and I think part of that is the issue is, are they curious? Do they want to seek to understand why does that happen?
Right.
Right? And then by seeking to understand that, they start thinking, I wonder if I can recreate that. Right? I think then once they get to that, it's like, well, to do that, you might need to know some math, you might need to know some science, and I think that's great. But that's where the motivation comes into for them to learn science and math, from the issue of the curiosity to observe things and want to be able to reproduce it.
Right. I love it. I'm remembering I was part of a Christian discipleship program back in the 90s, and we always had to remind ourselves that the most difficult students were the future leaders, and we weren't there to create compliant clones.
Yes.
Which is all too often what churches are looking for.
Yeah, and you know, I became a Christian when I was in my freshman year in college.
Okay.
And through the navigators, and sometimes the navs wanted to make me compliant. And there was some tension in that, because I'm not naturally a compliant person.
Right.
And so there were things that I'll give you an example. You'll love this example.
I'm all ears.
So I was in the navigators, and I guess there was too much multiple dating going on. So the nav rep of our group, an older
Navigators
man,
is like
it's
college.
a parachurch Christian organization. It's very it's like InterVarsity or Campus Crusade for Christ crew. Anyway, so I was part of that group, and they decided you cannot date.
I can
you
only
cannot date a girl more than one time because they're trying to prevent us isolating ourselves with a particular female. And so I'm like, so I liked this girl, right? And I wanted to go out with her more than once. So I said, okay, I think this is a stupid rule.
So
here's what I did. So I'm going to get around this rule.
Yeah, okay.
So here's what I did.
Yeah.
I went out with a girl I wanted to go out with on Friday night. And then I wanted to go out with her on Saturday night. But according to this rule, I couldn't do that. So what I did is I went out with another girl for lunch on Saturday, so that I could technically go out with a girl I wanted to go out with again on Saturday night. So, yeah. So anyway, you give me a rule, and I'll figure out how to get around it.
Okay, I appreciate that. So great. So, what I hear you saying though is, in high school you were not a model student, but then you went on to an engineering degree. So how did that transition work out from high school to college?
Well, I think part of the issue is I have 5 older sisters.
Okay.
And my sisters have kind of been trailblazers. We're first generation college educated. And so my sisters were really the trailblazers to go to college. And I owe them a lot of credit for that. But the key thing that happened is that when I graduated from high school, there is no school in the country that would have accepted me because of my grades and SAT scores. They were horrible. But UTEP, obviously, if you have a pulse and you have a high school degree, you can go, which I'm really grateful for because we're open access. We give a chance to anybody who wants to come.
Oh, wow.
So, but the real instigation was my father. So I'm finishing high school. My dad knows that's coming. And he says, well, son, you have 3 options. You can go to the military.
Okay.
You can get a job in town. And here's how much rent is to live here.
Okay.
Or you can go to college and you can live here for free. And I'm like, okay. Can you imagine someone like me going to the military and saying, hell no, I'm not getting up and making my bed? And the issue of getting a job, I have to pay rent. So I thought, well, I can live here for free if I go to college. And my sisters go to college and I think they're doing okay. So I'll go to college. So anyway, I took option
college,
3.
Yes.
The college option.
Okay.
And I chose engineering because I had to fix my car to keep it running. And I understood mechanical things, right? I had a good feel for those things. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I didn't want to do science because I didn't think I was a good scientist. I didn't want to do, education or anything else. So I kind of chose engineering as a default because I had a good feel for stuff. And it turned out that I really ended up enjoying it and loving it. Never changed my major.
Love it. So a lot more to unpack in this conversation. We're about to go into a break. Just want to remind our listeners that I hope you are enjoying these conversations that we have on Friday afternoons. The airtime is covered by the generous donations of people just like you. If you want to get involved, we really, really get excited about donations of any amount because it means someone's listening, someone appreciates what we're doing. If you're interested in that, you can go to KELPradio.com and click on that Cornerstone Broadcasting link. A lot more to unpack with Dr. Gonzalez. We're going to hit a break. We'll be right back. Do not touch that dial. 915 Talk is listener supported. If you believe that local Christian talk radio is important to our community, please take a moment to prayerfully consider taking part. For all donation options, including secure online giving, visit KELPradio.com and click on the Cornerstone Broadcasting link. Let's reach our neighbors in the Borderland together.
915.
Testify.
I used to be a hardcore Catholic. I actually wasn't giving all praise and honor to God or Jesus Christ. I was worshiping the Virgin Mary, and little by little I started seeing things that were just not right. And it was by listening to your radio station. I would like to tell you how I came upon this station. I used to work for a concrete company, and we were working on 24-hour shifts, and my truck was assigned to somebody at night. So when I came in the morning, they changed all my stations. And so I had my stations already programmed. So I was changing it, and I came upon KLP. And so I left it there because they called me into dispatch to go get my ticket. And when I came back, I just kept listening to it. And if I never heard this radio station, who knows, I probably would have still been lost, still living in this darkness.
Overcame him by the blood of the Lamb
And by the word of their testimony.
KELPradio.com.
And we're back. Really enjoying this conversation with Dr. Gonzalez. He's the chair of the physics department at UTEP. And
Engineering.
Sorry. Thank you. Engineering.
I'm the chair of engineering.
Did I keep on saying physics?
No, you said physics for the first time.
Okay, thank you.
My colleague that is the chair of physics would be very insulted.
Well, I do have a question because you talked about open access for students at UTEP. How do you allow open access, which sounds great, and also have a high quality program?
I think that is a challenge. You know that UTEP is the only open access research tier 1 research university in the United States.
Okay, what does that mean?
So tier 1 research is that you're like less than 10% of universities in the United States produce as much research as UTEP does.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we do that with an open access mission. So the fact that you can have both open access and quality at the same time was Diana Natalicia's dream.
Okay.
And a lot of people were naysayers, like, you can't do that. You have to be selective if you're going to build a research machine. And she helped us get to a point where we could show that you can be open access and still have. Obviously, because we allow people like me, when I was going to be a lot of people that don't make it, But the issue is that some of us do. like me.
So you're giving a chance.
Yeah, we give a chance. Say, if you're willing to come in and work hard and get up to speed on stuff, we'll give you a pathway.
Right.
Where places like, the very selective schools will say, sorry, we won't even give you a chance.
Right.
And so we know we can't save everybody, but you can save some.
Right.
And so in that I think I'm one of those examples, right? I would not get accepted to any of the high-level schools, but UTEP gave me a chance, and I worked hard and, got up to speed with things I needed to get to speed, and I am what I am today because UTEP gave me a chance.
Wow. Okay, so again, when I was reading through your bio, which I thoroughly enjoyed, there's a whole section called research interests. They are wide-ranging.
Yes.
And I'm only going to ask you about one of them.
Okay.
Predicting and quantifying muscle fatigue in altered gravity environments. What is that, and why does it matter?
Okay, so you realize that more and more, especially with the mission to Mars, we're going to be operating, we're going to do stuff that's in altered gravity environments.
Okay, stop right there. Are we going to make it to Mars?
We will eventually.
Okay.
The biggest challenge is...
I just want crazy prediction.
Yeah.
Like how many years from now?
Not in my lifetime. Okay. I mean, get to Mars, a human get to Mars. Not in my lifetime, and I'm 60, they'll be 62. I'm going to say we will put a person on Mars within 50 years.
50 years. Okay. Within 50 years.
A person.
Okay.
On Mars.
All right. Okay.
Maybe sooner, but I'll say 50 years.
Okay, so let's talk about muscle fatigue in altered gravity environments.
So altered gravity environments means that you're just in an environment that isn't the gravity conditions of what we're at right now. Right. Altered gravity environments is like if you're on an F-16 and you're pulling 10 Gs.
Yes.
Right? But let's say you had that continuously. This, a 1 pound object weighs 10 pounds now. Right.
That's crazy.
And so altered gravity environments also are you're in an environment where you don't have that much gravity. Because our muscles act differently in altered gravity environments, they produce fatigue differently.
Okay.
And we need to know that. If we're going to go to Mars and spend months getting there, and if we do a station that's going to be on Mars where the gravity will be different, we need to understand what impact that's going to have on performance and fatigue.
So, very dumb, basic question. If I'm going to live on Mars and I want to come back to Earth, do I need to lift a different weight set? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
to stay in shape so that I can be, useful again on
absolutely.
Earth?
I mean, think about the astronauts are on the space station, right, where there's zero gravity.
Right. They're stuck up there from what I understand.
They're stuck up there. Yeah, some are stuck up there for a while. But even when they're up there for 6 months and come back, they have muscle mass loss, because you don't need as much muscle mass or strength to do things. That's why they get on bikes. That's why they do resistance exercises.
So that they are doing that.
They are doing that, yeah. But it's very difficult to replicate everything you do in gravity.
Okay.
So when they come back to Earth, they're gently readapting to a new environment. So I think we take for granted how much gravity provides resistance to us in the process.
Okay. So is there an application for those of us who are just going to stay here in El Paso?
Well, when you go swimming.
Okay.
You're in an altered state environment.
Right.
Yeah. And so part of the issue is that if you ever notice if you need rehab, and sometimes say, well, go to the pool because you'll find it easier.
Okay.
Right. And so that's very true. Like if you go to the pool, you can you weigh less because of the buoyancy.
Right.
And so you can do stuff in the pool that you couldn't do outside of the pool.
Right.
So yes, there is applications outside of people going to Mars or the moon or the space station.
I heard that when Kenny on the board went to the pool, he actually perfected himself where he could stay halfway from the bottom to the top, just like a fish.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to see you do that. Yeah. Yeah. Please send me a video.
So switching gears here in a major way, you're the founder of Limbs International.
Correct.
I like to do a part of the show where I just say what I think it is.
Okay.
And you tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
So prosthetics cost a lot of money. And I Googled it before we came on the air.
Okay.
And I saw that prosthetics can cost anywhere between $5,000 and $70,000.
Yeah, it depends what joint and how much the prosthetic can do.
And so what you and I think probably another team of people did is you engineered a prosthetic that is much more financially manageable for those in
poor areas of the world.
Right. Yeah. So far I'm doing good.
Yeah. So far you're good. Doing pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went on the Limbs International web page, Limbs International. Those who listen can look for it. And I found out if I donate $600, someone's going to get a prosthetic.
Correct. That actually covers the making of the prosthetic, the shipping, and their rehabilitation.
Right.
So it covers all that for one person.
$600. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
So my question is possibly offensive.
Okay.
But what's so difficult about creating a cost-effective prosthetic? Because I assume it was a major project.
Yeah.
But me just sitting here, being dumb,
Okay.
I'm like, it looks like a prosthetic. Like, why can't anyone just engineer that?
Well, that's exactly the thought I had when we started this project.
Okay.
I said, why can't we make this cost effective?
Okay.
It's exactly the question I had. So it's a little bit multidimensional, but here's the quick answer. In the United States, because there's regulations and because there is litigation,
Right.
and because...
Why does it always come down to this, Dr. Gonzalez?
Well, I mean, we live in a world that's litigious, and we live in a world that we want regulations. And so,
Okay.
if you drive a car, right, you want your car to do certain things,
Right.
and there's federal standards. And if your car doesn't do something and it kills you, there's someone should be responsible. So there's a need at a certain level for litigation and regulation. Okay,
Right.
That's a whole show unto itself.
Right. Okay.
But the other thing that impacts us quite a bit is that you're not making tens of thousands of these.
Okay.
You're making a few of them. And so cost is also functional to how much you put out there.
So you're saying the expensive prosthetics are
because
like
the issue-
custom made, or
No, they're not custom made, but the research required and the building, if you're going to make 10 of something versus 10,000 of something, you
Right.
can automate and get better manufacturing processes for making 10,000 as opposed
Right.
to 10.
Okay.
And you can drop the cost. So part of it is just the issue of sheer need,
Okay.
right? And part of it is the issue, some of these components in the United States have very sophisticated capabilities.
Okay.
So when we went into it, we said, why don't we look at what we have in the United States, reverse engineer it, right? Get to understand it.
Okay.
Remember what I talked about?
Yep.
We're curious. Let's understand how it works. Then let's try to recreate it and see if we can do this. Let's say we can get 80 to 90% of the functionality at 5 to 10% of the cost. And we
Okay,
did
so-
that.
Okay. So what I'm understanding is very functional, but not as fancy as the $70,000.
Doesn't have some of the bells and whistles. Let me give you an
Yeah.
analogy that we can understand.
Okay.
Your car, what does your car do? What's the fundamental operation of your car?
Usually it drives.
Usually, Usually it's to get you from point A to point B.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the fundamental aspect of a car. But our cars have air conditioning,
Right.
right? Power steering,
Yeah.
powered brakes,
Yeah.
a really nice radio, or, all this stuff. There's all these accessories cars come with that actually add nothing to gain you from point A and point B other than comfort.
Right.
And so you're paying for that when you get a car. And there's regulations because if you're going to go on the highway at 60 miles an hour and you get a wreck, you need airbags, you need seat
Right,
belts.
right.
And so at that cost. If I was just going to build a car to get you from point A to point B, and I didn't have to deal with all these accessories,
Yes.
and I didn't have to deal with a lot of stuff like airbags and stuff, I could get you a car for 10% of the price.
Right. Okay.
So that's part of the analogy. That breaks down at some point, but that's the general analogy.
right. So are the prosthetics legs only, or are
We focus primarily, exclusively on lower extremity
okay?
because mobility in the poorest parts of the world is critical to livelihood.
Okay.
So we don't do arms.
Right.
There's other organizations that do arms, but we don't. We just do, legs.
Okay. And how long did it take you to develop this prosthetic?
Well, we started in 2004. We had our first prototype a year later that we tested in Kenya.
Okay.
And we now we've made advancements and improvements, and so the first one came out in 2005, and we're producing stuff today that will look similar but not identical, because we've made improvements at a cost-effective level that patients have said it would be nice if it could do this and this and that.
Right. So what I understand is, as of today, it's thousands of people served around the world.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Okay, and over 50 nations.
Right.
And what's the dream?
Well, we really would
the
like.
vision.
So here's the issue. It's not like just cooking a meal for somebody and they eat and they're done. Right. There's a proverb, of teach a man to fish.
Right.
Right. And he'll be able to eat for a lifetime,
right,
versus giving him a fish.
Yeah.
And they'll only eat for that day.
Right.
We really work hard and empowering clinics to help them help the poor.
Okay.
Right. So when you get fitted as an amputee, you need a lot of rehabilitation. When you get amputated, there's aspects going on with your, what we call the stump or your residual limb, that needs to shrink. It needs to be properly maintained before you can actually even get fitted for a prosthetic.
Okay.
Because there's a socket that needs to go after. So it's a very complex process. And these complex processes are done by clinics. So we partner with clinics to do this work. Many of these clinics are NGOs. Some are Christian NGOs. Some are secular NGOs. And we work with them to be able to help the poor have access to technology. Because we provide the technology and we provide the education, but we rely on their infrastructure to make it happen.
Right. So there's the preparation of the limb and then gait training?
Rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So we call it community-based rehabilitation. Here's a fascinating thing. As a believer, I think you'd love this. So one of the things we developed is that we realized that in the poorest parts of the world, people get a prosthetic and they say, okay, here you have it, you're on your own. In the United States, you get a prosthetic and you have 6 months to 2 years of rehabilitation.
Right.
And so he said, so how can we give these amputees rehabilitation? So what we did is we partnered with churches in these parts of the world, and we said, let us teach you how to do rehab for amputees. The clinic fits the patient, and then the churches partner with the clinic, and the amputees come to the church, and the church provides them rehabilitation.
Wow.
And now these churches are having an outreach to the poorest of the poor around the world.
Wow. So
we developed that probably in around 2012.
Okay. So for those who are interested, it's limsinternational.org. You can check it out. You can make a donation. You can learn more.
Yeah, you can go to LIMS, limbs.org.
Oh, okay.
Even shorter. Now, one of the things I get, just because of listeners, is we do not operate in the United States.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I'm looking at this picture. I mean, it's actually, it appears to be.
Well, what you're looking at in that picture is what we call, there's a microprocessor knee called the C leg from Otterbach.
The C leg.
It's called the C leg, like the letter C.
Okay. I was picturing something about sailors.
No. And that has microelectronics built in to helps kind of understand how you're walking and adjust to a person's gait.
Right.
We took and reversed engineered this. Oh. This is a $40,000 knee.
Okay.
We reversed engineered it for $500.
Wow.
And it does everything the C-Leg does. And we use artificial intelligence for it to adapt to how it works. So that's another thing I do is artificial intelligence.
Okay. I want to talk about artificial intelligence. I definitely do. But first we're going to go to a break. Before we go to the break, I do want to just mention we're super grateful to our impact partners, especially the impact partner that impacted Kenny on the Board's mouth today, High Desert Oral and Facial Surgery, HDOFS.com. 2 thumbs up, Kenny on the Board?
Absolutely 2 thumbs up. And you do have Charlie before we go on break.
Oh, that's right. Oh, before we go on break, we have Charlie 1. Charlie 1, is he on the phone? Charlie 1, can you hear me?
Hold on.
Just a moment. Kenny on the Board's queuing up Charlie 1.
Charlie with Friday's traffic.
Hey, Charlie 1, what are you seeing on the roads today?
Well, there's a lot going on right now, Andy. Lots to get to. First of all, Border Highway East in Zaragoza, we have an injury crash right here. All lanes are closed. They're all blocked up right there, Border Highway East in Zaragoza. And the backup goes back to Padres. So we're talking about maybe 3-4 miles of backup where you're bumper to bumper right there. alternate route, maybe take North Loop or Alameda. But keep in mind that Border Highway East and Zaragoza are really stacked up right now with all lanes closed right there. You have to detour that. And,
do not go east on Zaragoza on the Border Highway.
Border Highway. I'm sorry?
Do not go east on the Border Highway. Forget about it.
Go east. Take North Loop, take Alameda, but if you go Border Highway East, that's you're going to be in the stop and go, bumper to bumper traffic.
That's how you ruin your Friday. Okay, continue.
That's right. Other things. Gateway West at Lomaland, we have an injury crash. We have fire department right there in the middle of the intersection. I see that right there. Fire department right there blocking that Gateway West at Lomaland on a busy intersection right now. Then another thing, Gateway West at Raider, there we have it's more of a minor crash that's going on there, but still. Then we have Loop 370, in the far east side, Loop 375 South and Iron Medics, we have a crash back up to Spur 601 there on that far east, maybe Fort Bliss area, Loop 375 South and Iron Medics tie up right there. Now, also, I would just want to mention one thing, Andy, that this weekend, this concerns Saturday through Sunday, they're going to close I-10 West completely at Mesa. I-10 West. To start Saturday at 4 a.m. It's going to go all the way through 24 hours, all the way through Sunday at 4 a.m. But also I-10 East will be closed at Trans Mountain. So we have two closures there. I-10 West at Mesa. I-10 East will be closed at Trans Mountain. And that's Saturday 4 a.m. all the way through Sunday at 4 a.m. So you have to plan your detours ahead of time.
Wow. I think, Charlie, when you're just telling us to stay at home.
That would be ideal, but we're not in an ideal world, are we?
Unless you're going to AlamoGlassPros.com, our impact partner. Go to AlamoGlassPros.com and get that tinning done. Or if you're going for the Daily Menudo, tell us about the Daily Menudo, Charlie One.
So that's they've got that at Mi Burrito Cafe, 3120 Traywood. Menudo every day, doesn't matter which day you go. Daily delicious menudo, delicious stuff there. Delicious menudo. They have other plates, Mexican plates, seafood, vegetarian options if you're on a diet there. Menudo every day at Mi Burrito Cafe, 3120 Traywood. And I just want to mention a couple of other things. Andy, I-10 East at Red, they're blocking the left lane. That's construction going on.
Okay.
Also, I-10 East, we have congestion. I-10 East at Lee Trevino, I-10 West at Lomaland, because those right lanes are taken away there. So there's a lot going on in traffic, a lot of congestion, and just be extra cautious this afternoon, Andy.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Charlie One. You enjoy the rest of your afternoon and the weekend.
Be safe.
Yep. Yes, sir. And for those of you who might be hearing a recording of this later, don't worry. This is Friday, January 24th. And if you're listening on a different day, you'll have different worries. So appreciate Charlie One. We're going to go to break, and then we'll be back with Dr. Gonzalez. It's 2025. What is your prayer for our Borderland community in the new year? Pastor Terry Gray of Sun City Calvary Chapel on El Paso's west side.
You know, one of my favorite words in the whole Bible is the word new. And there's two Greek words for that word. There's the Greek word neos, which means your most recent whatever. And then there's kainos, which means a higher quality, a higher state, something new. So that word, kainos, shows up in three very important verses. It shows up in 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. When you come to Christ, you become brand new. And then in 2 Corinthians, it says, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. Jesus wants to make your life brand new every day. And then in the second to last chapter of the Bible, Jesus says, behold, I make all things new. That's a whole new quality of eternal life that we can't even imagine. My prayer for you is that this will be a new you in this new year as you cooperate with all that Jesus wants to do in you. Are you looking for a Bible teaching church on the west side of El Paso? This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. here on this station. Calvary Chapel, Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccweb.org. www.ccsuncity.org. The Lord bless you, my friends.
And we're back. This is 915 Talk. We're with Dr. Gonzalez. During the break, you heard Pastor Terry Gray of Sun City Calvary Chapel. Always stay tuned after 915 Talk on Friday afternoons, because at 5 p.m. you'll hear Summons with Terry Gray. I love the fact that there's good, strong biblical teaching available right here in El Paso. So before we went to the break, Dr. Gonzalez, we heard about the traffic in El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to hear from a scientific point of view, what is the solution?
Autonomous driving cars.
Really?
Yes, actually, I think that will reduce traffic considerably. I would
Why?
say by 99%, because you'll have systems that will talk to each other and it'll have traffic flow better. I think it's one of the best things that will happen for the future.
Autonomous driving cars.
Correct.
So you're not nervous about like big car wrecks or anything like that?
No, because I think once you get the systems and the sensors to work, I think they will all slow down in tandem and come in tandem. I think at some point, if you really want to go to the next level beyond that, there'll come a point where you don't even own a car, right? It's now you get a usage fee, and there's just cars that drive around. They'll pick somebody up and drop them off, and they'll pick another person up, and you just schedule everything.
Right.
And it's like having Uber, except all the cars are Uber, and you get a membership fee, and the car picks you up. So I really think that.
You think that's better?
Much better. Yes.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
there's people that love to drive, but
Right.
But I think overall, you can go home and you can concentrate on other things than the traffic.
Right. Well, I heard a comedian talking about safety on autonomous driving cars, and he was saying something like, "You're nervous about the safety issue, but when you walk into a grocery store, you've never been hit by the automatic door. But if you had but if you had a person operating that door, you'd be hit about half the time."
Well, it's really interesting. If you look at just the data on the miles driven by autonomous cars and the wrecks they have, compared to the miles driven by people and the wrecks they have, you're much better off in an autonomous car. I'm not saying that it's a perfect system, but it's certainly better than humans who are fallible and playing with their iPhone and screaming at kids and in a rush and have tempers and stuff.
Right.
Much better. I think it is one of the big advantages that the future has.
Right. Well, I know Kenny on the board struggles with his temper in traffic, but I think it's also interesting to just think about this. And also, I wanted to talk about AI for a moment. When we think of autonomous driving cars, I'll tell you what I'm concerned about.
Okay.
When we talk about AI, you're an educator.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't all of this make us dumber as people?
It can, if you use it, if you don't know, if you're just using it to get information.
Okay.
And you don't go beyond that. You don't check it and stuff. I call AI an agent. It's not just a tool. It's actually an agent. And an agent has the ability to adapt. And so AI can adapt to you, as opposed to a hammer's a hammer no matter what. So these agents that we're developing have tremendous potential to accelerate my abilities and what I do. I use AI every day.
Okay.
In fact, I teach students how to use AI because it is here whether we like it or not. And if we don't learn to use it in a way that helps accelerate our potential, it really will be a detriment. There's so much that AI opens up in the medical field and the technological field that takes us so much longer. There's things that we can automate that humans do. So before, robotics was like, well, we're eliminating human labor. AI automates human intelligence.
Okay.
And I can actually do more things. So
Okay.
I'll give you an example.
Yes, please do.
So all my email is replied to via AI. So here's what it does. I get an email, I hit reply, and I get an automatic response generated from AI. AI has studied my responses. They
Right.
studied who I'm replying to. And if it's a friend, it makes it more casual. If it's a professional, it makes it more professional. I still am the final editor. So I will edit it. If I like it, I'll say, yeah, that's fine. Send. I can say, make it shorter, make it longer. Oh, you need this point, you need that point. It actually makes me more efficient.
Right.
Because I can now handle thousands of emails a day versus maybe a few hundred.
Right.
And so that's a good tool to use.
Right.
And so there's a lot of positives. I think there's an aspect that there's a lot of fear around AI because it's like fire. Fire is very, very good. We use it for a lot of good things. But fire is very destructive also. And so AI is like fire. We can use it for positive things, or it can be very destructive. And it all depends on the hands that it's in. And at some point, there'll probably be regulations about it. It's a brave new world. We'll have to figure it out. But as a believer, I think we need to be involved in this process, because if we say, well, we don't want to be involved in this process and just leave it to other people, we won't have our voice to be able to contribute to those discussions of ethics and AI.
Okay, so let me start off with, as an educator, so you teach your students how to use the AI.
Correct. In fact, I require them to use it for assignments.
Okay, so are there assignments where you do not allow them to use AI? Or and how do you make the
There are
differentiation?
situations where I would put certain restrictions to doing it. And there's times where students use it, and I point out the issues of, you used it, but the outcome was negated because you used it.
Okay.
So I think, like anything else, we have to help people learn how to use these tools.
Right.
If you don't teach them how to use it, then they don't learn the drawbacks, but they also don't learn the advantages.
Okay.
And this is so young. This technology is so young that we're just dreaming of where we're going.
Right.
And I'll tell you, every few months I learn another thing. I'm learning as we go along. And so I think it's exciting. I think it's a brave new world. And I'm more optimistic than I am fearful.
Okay, so during break, you told me how AI is used in prosthetics.
It is. We actually use AI in our prosthetics.
So tell me about it.
So for highly sophisticated prosthetics, right, not the ones we put out for the poorest of the poor,
right,
we can use AI to predict when someone's going to fall.
Okay.
And then the knee will adapt to help them recover from a fall so they don't hit the ground.
So it can tell by the gait or the
It can tell by the gait and the stumbling that's going to occur. It reacts faster than the human brain.
Yeah, I can usually tell when Kenny on the board's about to fall, but he doesn't have an AI decap yet.
So part of the issue is that this is a good tool, because if you're an amputee and you fall, that's when a lot of injuries happen.
Right.
So wouldn't it be cool if the AI was built into your prosthetic so that if you're going to fall, it kind of knows you're going there and it helps prevent that fall? It's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
I get very concerned for things like creative writing. I don't know. Just I believe, as a believer, that we are created to be creative.
We are, and I guess what I'm telling you is that AI will help us be more creative, because there's grunt work, there's intellectual grunt work that we do every day that I could actually be more creative if I didn't have to do that intellectual grunt work.
Yeah. So you also said, believers should be actively involved in the discussion in the development of AI. What are some issues that you see popping up that we should be aware of or speaking into?
Well, I think part of the issues regarding AI is the issue that it generates thought processes.
Okay.
Right? It takes information out there and generates thought processes. I think if we don't make our voice heard and into the broader discussion, we will be either put aside or ignored. And we have seen that occur because we don't see enough believers involved in the academy as professors. We don't see them involved in Hollywood. We don't see them involved in journalism. We don't see them involved, in a lot of things related to where we need to have an impact. We have relegated those things because for whatever reason the believers or the church has said, well, you should be these other things because that's a, secular world. So my daughter is a cinematographer in Hollywood, and we need believers in Hollywood.
Yes.
We can't relegate it to the rest of the world. And then we say, well, Hollywood's gone to, to pot. Well, it's gone to pot because we've chosen not to be involved in it.
Right.
Right. So I'm a big proponent. Be out there in the world. Get involved in the academy. Get involved in Hollywood. Get involved in these things that we criticize as being lost.
Okay. Love it. Super interesting. I want to know, so a big issue that came up in the last mayoral election was the brain drain from El Paso.
Yes.
And in talking with politicians and reading about it, UTEP came up in those conversations. What do you see as being maybe the issue and the solution with brain drain?
We have to bring in companies that need the talent that UTEP is generating. We lose 60 to 70% of the engineering graduates that the university produces, and they leave El Paso.
Oh, just simply because there's not jobs.
Because there's not jobs, right?
Oh.
The brain drain is because there's not jobs.
I actually thought it was the opposite.
No, the brain drain because I left. As soon as I graduated, I left. I left to Louisville, Kentucky because there wasn't a job here that I wanted to do, right? So we're losing 60 to 70% of the engineering graduates, if not more, outside. And part of it is because we don't have the industries that needs this talent here.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of chicken and the egg. You know, are these industries going to come to El Paso and realize, well, if we go to El Paso, we don't have enough talent.
Right.
Right. Well, come to El Paso and we'll help you get the talent. So there's been some stuff. One of the big advantages lately is the whole aerospace industry. We have 2 spaceports, one in Van Horn and one out north of Las Cruces.
Right.
That's going to help us. But the engineering, there's just spaceports. That's where you launch. The engineering isn't happening there.
Right.
So unless we bring industries that need the intellectual talent, we're going to continue to face brain drain.
Okay. So we only have a couple minutes left, so this is going to be rapid fire.
Okay.
Big questions.
Sure.
The beginning of the program, we say the world is looking at El Paso. What will we say to the world? What is, you're here, you're from El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing about El Paso that people outside of El Paso don't understand?
That it really is not that the crime rate here is really, really low.
Okay.
I've talked to people all over the world, and they associate us, especially during the drug cartel wars, that we were a violent city. I think that's hurt us. We have a hard time recruiting people from outside El Paso because of the perception of the city.
Okay. Very good. And then last question.
Okay.
What is your dream or your hope, your vision for the future of higher education in El Paso?
I would hope that we would continue to build a university that serves all people, but at the same time continue to attract people from outside of El Paso County to come to UTEP.
Love it.
That's what we need to do.
Okay, love it. Thank you for coming in today.
No
really
problem.
enjoyed this conversation. Feel like there's so much to talk about. We could keep on going, but the clock is showing me that we've run out of time. We've been with Dr. Gonzalez and just talking about engineering, prosthetics, accessibility to education, so many things. And I love that they're happening right here in El Paso. So much to discover about our neighbors here. And I do hope that those of you listening are enjoying these discussions. Just as a reminder, you can always find this and past discussions at kelpradio.com. Just look for that 915 talk link. And as we always say, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk on KELP Christian Radio. To listen to past recordings of 915 Talk, just visit kelpradio.com and click on the 915 Talk link. Until next time, love your neighbor, love your city, and give God all the glory.